3 sinister true last days of school, unexplained horrors revealed from haunted classrooms. The clock was ticking down to summer, but Jake, Mia, and Ryan had no reason to celebrate. Instead of the anticipation and freedom that came with graduation, they could only feel dread growing stronger inside the crumbling walls of their school. Dark whispers traveled through the hallways like a chilling breeze, echoing stories of the past, stories of unexplained disappearances and shadows lurking in forgotten corners. The very school that had once been their sanctuary now loomed over them, a monstrous structure filled with secrets. As they gathered for their final study session in the East Wing, the lights flickered ominously. "Did you see that?" Jake gasped. Mia's heart raced, sweat prickling her brow. "It's just nerves. Finals are coming up," she tried to reassure them, but her voice trembled. What was that feeling? A brush of ice across their spines, that gnawing sensation of being watched. They forfeited their laughter when they stumbled upon an abandoned classroom in the West Wing, where a single light flickered erratically. "Looks like a horror movie set," Ryan joked weakly, but even he couldn't stifle the chill crawling up his arms. The 3 of them knew the story's muffled screams and pounding hearts of former students, but they always brushed them off as rumors until now. They decided to ignore the unease as nerves from the impending exams infected them all. But the atmosphere thickened. The next day, they entered the main hall to find one chalkboard eerily filled with scrawled words, "Help, she watches, don't trust anyone." They shared glances, minds racing. "Someone's messing with us, right?" Jake asked, but part of him wondered if it was too twisted to be a prank. Mia swallowed hard, "Or maybe they're trying to warn us." "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The school had become a maze of shadows, a facade of reassurance hiding something far more sinister. With each passing hour, Jake's breath turned shallow. Late one afternoon, searching for solace in their guidance counselor, they stumbled upon unsettling truths, whispers of a lost student, forever trapped in the school's forgotten history. The kind woman who had been their refuge began to morph into the specter of a nightmare. "She's hiding something," Ryan whispered, the dread growing like an ugly vine around their hearts. Suddenly, the flickering light surrounded them again, nearly suffocating in its desperation. They turned, seeking an escape, but found the counselor at the edge of the classroom, her eyes wide and pleading. And as shadows coiled tighter, the whispers crescendoed into a terrifying scream, splintering their fragile grip on sanity. The thought echoed through their minds loudly: the truth would consume them, and summer was fading away, leaving hints of betrayal trailing behind. As they ran towards the door, darkness danced around them, clutching, grasping. Questions clawed at their minds. What was happening? Who could they trust? They staggered back into the unknown, wondering if they might become mere shadows in this haunted hall, prey to something far more monstrous than they could ever imagine. Would they survive the last days of school? Or would the whispers claim them for good? The door slammed shut behind them, echoing through the empty hallway like a funeral knell. Mia pressed her back against the cold wood, her heart pounding so loudly she feared it would shatter the oppressive silence. Jake and Ryan stood beside her, their faces pale and twisted with fear. What just happened? Ryan gasped, breathless, like he'd run a marathon. I don't know, but we can't stay here, Jake replied, glancing over his shoulder. Wisps of shadow seemed to stretch out from the classroom, coiling like serpents eager to ensnare them. They backed away slowly, eyes darting in every direction, half expecting the darkness to lunge at them. As they neared the end of the hallway, the flickering lights grew dimmer, as if consumed by the very shadows that haunted the school. Each step felt heavier, each moment laden with dread. A sudden chill swept through the corridor, laced with low murmurs that danced at the edges of their consciousness. They could not quite catch the words, but the emotions were clear desperation, fear, and an urgent plea for escape. They burst into the main hall, where sunlight flickered like a dying star through jagged windows. It felt like a brief reprieve, but a weight pressed down on them, a reminder of the nightmarish reality lurking just out of sight. Mia's eyes fixed on the chalkboard, its ominous warning now more vivid than ever. What if it's true? She whispered, panic clawing at her throat. Jake clenched his fists. We have to go to the library. It might have anything that explains this. With no better plan, they turned on their heels, running toward what was supposed to be a safe haven. But their laughter, once so easy and carefree, died in their throats, replaced by a somber understanding this library was no ordinary sanctuary. As they pushed open the heavy oak door, the musty scent enveloped them, filled with the weight of countless forgotten tales. Dim light streamed from the windows, casting long shadows across towering shelves. It felt wrong, unwelcoming. Look, Ryan mouthed, pointing to an ancient book that lay carelessly on a nearby table, its pages yellowed with age. What if it has the stories about what we've been hearing? Mia reached for it hesitantly, her fingers brushing against the spine. The moment she touched it, a violent shudder coursed through the building, rattling the windows and making the books quiver on their shelves. What was that? Jake yelled, his eyes wide with terror. Something in here doesn't want us to read this, Ryan said through clenched teeth, backing away. Shadows flickered at the corners of his vision, twisting and swaying like specters come alive. The air grew thick, heavy with electricity, as if the entire library was holding its breath. Mia's heart thundered as she pried the book open, her hands trembling. The text was scrawled in frantic handwriting, depicting horrifying events, disappearances, strange noises, and a mysterious figure that wandered the hallways at night. This is about the lost student. She whispered, voice cracking. Suddenly, the lights flickered violently, and with a deafening crash, a shelf toppled over, sending books crashing to the floor. They stumbled back, screams caught in their throats as a shadow drifted across the room, unmistakably human but shrouded in darkness. They darted for the exit, desperate to escape the malevolent presence growing in the midst of the library. We have to find answers. Jake yelled as they burst into the corridor, reality blurring behind them. The entity was already gaining on them, its whispers rising above the chaos, a sinister echo coldly promising them next would be their names etched into the school's tragic history. With the chilling realization that the clock was ticking down on their lives, all they could question was if escape was even possible. As they raced down the hall, shadows swirled around them, and screams faded into the haunting silence of the school. Would they unearth the truth in time, or would they join the lost ones in the darkness? And then, in the very darkness they feared, a familiar face emerged, someone they thought was a friend. Would it lead them to salvation or doom? Mia's breath hitched as she recognized the shadowy figure stepping into the flickering light. Sam, their classmate they'd last seen laughing in the cafeteria. What are you doing here? She gasped, the words tumbling out as if they'd been trapped in her throat. Run! Sam shouted, but the urgency in his voice was laced with something darker. His eyes darted to the space beyond them, fingers trembled at his sides. The whispers from the library had followed them, a chill grazing their skin like icy fingers tracing their backs. Sam, we need help. Jake begged, panic so thick it pricked at the edges of reason. Something is after us, something from the library. What you found, it's not just stories, Sam murmured, as he stepped closer. The shadows twisted behind him, twisting like smoke, flirting with the flickering lights. It's real, and it's hungry. Mia, Jake listened to him. Ryan shouted, squeezing his eyes shut. We can't be here. Before they could react, the lights brazenly flickered again, plunging them into darkness for a heartbeat that stretched like a lifetime. They stumbled into Sam, who pulled them close, whispering urgently, "There's a way to stop it, but you have to trust me." What do we do? Mia's voice was barely above a whisper as they huddled close, hearts pounding in unison. Back to the library, Sam said, and a fresh wave of fear washed over them. We need to confront it. It lives in the stories. In the words. Ryan hesitated, glancing down the eerie hallway that seemed to stretch infinitely, shadows swirling like churning water. Are you insane? That's where it came from. It's already here. We have to face it. Sam's eyes burned with intensity, yet his comfort seemed a thin veil over uncertainty. Suddenly, a scream echoed down the hallway. It wasn't their own, but filled with despair and terror, and it was coming closer. A sickening crunch followed, like bones snapping, a menacing promise of what awaited them should they fail. Mia felt her stomach flip. In there, she breathed. We need to go in. They didn't know whether it was bravery or madness that propelled them forward, but with Sam leading, they rushed back toward the library. The door creaked open as if welcoming them back into its dark embrace, shadows swirling eagerly in a twisted dance. Inside, the oppressive atmosphere enveloped them. The shelves loomed like silent witnesses to their fate. The ancient book stirred, pages fluttering as if responding to their presence, the air thickening with an unspeakable heaviness. Find the truth among the lies, Sam urged, eyes darting. It hides in the words. It needs your fear, and just as Mia reached for the book, the ground shuddered beneath them. The walls began to swell and twist, pulsing with a life of their own. The whispers swelled into a deafening roar, voices overlapping like a cacophony of lost souls, demanding to be heard. They scrambled back, but the library warped around them, trapping them in a maze of agony. We have to stay close. Jake shouted, his voice swallowed by the tide of sound. Mia's heart raced as she looked for an escape, but the shadows coiled around her, wrapping her in bitter memories. She could feel the weight of their hopes, their fear, pressing down like a collapsing roof. What if they couldn't escape? What if the stories were true, and this time they were the characters ensnared within? Each moment stretched, filled with desperation and dread, as a figure materialized from the shifting darkness at the edge of their vision, a horror birthed from the very pages they sought to unlock. With raw terror in her heart, Mia grabbed the book again, praying it held the key to breaking the curse that bonded them to this nightmarish realm. But as she flipped the pages, one sentence caught her eye: the end is only the beginning. And then shadows surged, engulfing them as the library seemed to come alive, seeking to claim their souls. Could they decipher the twisted tales before it was too late? Or would they be trapped forever in the same fate as the lost student? Mia's fingers trembled against the spine of the book, each heartbeat echoing the growing chaos around them. In that bleak moment, the shadows seemed alive, pulsating with hunger, drawing closer with every flicker of the lights. She felt it then, the weight of countless eyes bore down on her, each glance filled with unnameable desire. We need to read it. Sam shouted over the cacophony. We need to find what it wants. Jake was practically shaking, but what if we don't like what we find? What if we don't make it out of here at all? Shut up. Mia snapped, fear overriding her better judgment. If we don't try, we'll never know. We can't let it win. A heavy thud reverberated through the floor, shaking the shelves. The whispers clawed at her ears, dark promises slipping through the cracks of her mind. She thumbed through the pages, each one an ominous prophecy that plucked at her sanity. The soul that fears becomes lost within, she read aloud, her voice faltering as a chill licked her skin. What does that even mean? Suddenly, the air grew thick and suffocating. Shadows slinked around them like serpents, coiling in tighter with every word spoken. Sam's eyes darted nervously across the shifting black. Keep going. There must be something else. Mia flipped another page, the sound grating against the rising panic. Here. She gasped. It says to conquer the dark, one must illuminate the truth. Great, but how do we do that? Jake's voice cracked, a tremor revealing his growing fear. The oppressive weight of the library pressed in on them, ready to squeeze the life out. Light! Sam yelled suddenly. We need to shed light on the stories. How do we do that? Ryan demanded, glancing fearfully at the book. The shadows lurched forward, eager to claim what was theirs. Mia's heart hammered fiercely. Check the desk. Maybe there's a lamp or something. They rushed toward the old librarian's desk, frantically searching through the crammed drawers. Each tremor beneath their feet felt like the library itself was alive, and it was displeased. Found it! Ryan yelled, yanking a dusty flashlight from the back of the drawer. What now? Point it at the book, shine it on the page. Sam urged. Mia steadied her breath, the adrenaline coursing through her veins. All right, stand back. As the beam cut through the oppressive shadows, a pulse of light illuminated the words she read. The whispers escalated, morphing into howls, a chorus of anger and despair filling the air. It's working! Sam shouted, clutching Mia's shoulder, an attempt to ground her in the chaos. But the shadows roared back, angry at the loss of power. The temperature dropped, a frigid hand gripped her throat. The book began to glow, a radiant light radiating from its pages. Words twisted and shifted, reforming right before her eyes. You cannot escape what you have unleashed. Panic surged. Mia's breath was short, the room beginning to swirl. What does that mean? She cried out, her voice nearly lost in the tumult. It means, Sam said, this is just the beginning. Before any one of them could speak again, the shadows lunged forward, swallowing them whole. The flashlight slipped from Ryan's hands, leaving them in an enveloping darkness. Mia's heart raced, the words echoing in her mind. What had they stirred? And how could they possibly fight against something that was now a part of them? Suddenly, she felt a tug at her mind, almost like a beckoning. Mia! She heard Sam's voice, trembling and raw. We need to find out what. But then a thick silence fell, an eerie calm after the storm, as if the library held its breath, waiting for their next move. Unknowingly, they had become part of the story, but which part? What terrors awaited them in the boundless darkness? And how could they hope to survive the truths that lay hidden behind the tales? Mia blinked, the oppressive darkness smothering her senses. For a moment, nothing made noise. No whispers, no shadows scraping against each other. Just a heavy silence that amplified the pounding of her heart. Are you guys okay? She managed to whisper, though her voice came out shaky and unsure. The stillness was surrounding, choking. What had they stepped into? Yeah. I think, Jake replied quietly, his voice barely above a murmur. But where are we? Light flickered around them, revealing ghostly shapes swirling in the void. Sam's frantic breath was now the only sound, amplified and jagged. They huddled together, fighting back the urge to scream as the darkness felt alive, twisting and closing in. Shine the flashlight. Sam called, panic spiraling in his tone. Mia's hands swept to the ground, scrambling for the flashlight that had clattered away. She felt the cool metal beneath her fingers and fumbled it back into position, the beam cutting through the murk like a knife. The shadows writhed at the edges of the light, retreating as if scorched. The pulsating darkness recoiled, but Mia's trembling hands struggled to hold steady. Ghostly echoes filled the air, indecipherable yet tainted with despair. What do you want? She shouted, her voice trembling. And in response, the shadows surged forward again with a sudden gust, almost like a whirlwind of dread. The flashlight spluttered, dimming as if the well of its energy was being siphoned away. Mia, listen! Sam shouted, his eyes wide with fear. We need to find the stories. Ryan interrupted, light flickering weakly. That's what the book said. We need to know what's behind them. His desperation climbed right along with the frantic tensions around them. Okay, but how? Mia scanned their surroundings, noticing splintered bookshelves and crumbling tomes floating like specters. The weight of centuries pressed against her, a suffocating burden of failed dreams and forgotten fates. A growl resonated, low and threatening. She felt it ripple through her bones, a primal instinct clawing at her gut. The book, it sits in the darkness. Mia hesitated, a chilling thought creeping in. Maybe it reveals more about us. A cold breath wafted around them, raising goosebumps along her arms. They were no longer separate. They were intertwined with every story held here, colored by their pasts and fears. Suddenly, the lights in the library flickered back to life. The sight was grotesque. Pages turned themselves, ink swirling into dark images of them as children. Cries of laughter bloomed, but twisted into an echo of cries as their younger selves stumbled through familiar hallways, embraced by unseen dangers. That's not real. Jake yelled, reaching for Mia's arm, his grip shaky. But even as he spoke, a memory emerged in the light. Mia standing alone at recess, eyes haunted by whispers mocking her every move. Each of them had their own darkness mirrored in the flickering pages. "Guys, it's feeding on our fears," Sam shouted, eyes darting around in wide panic. We need to confront what we see." The shadows pulsed angrily, anger igniting within the darkness. "You were supposed to be lost." A voice croaked, an echo sounding from the very pages of the book, twisted and guttural. "What do you mean?" Mia gasped, fear rising like bile, but the shadows spoke as one, a cacophony swirling and crashing. "You awoke us with your enclaves. Every tearful truth and hidden sin was laid bare. We are the remnants of those you left behind." The light flickered again, dizzying, and suddenly the ground beneath them trembled, shaking their very resolve. "If we don't confront our fears, we'll be consumed." Ryan shouted through the chaos, a flash of clarity sparking amidst the horror. Mia felt her heart pound in unity with the thunderous chaos. But the words, confront, and truth, terrified her. What did it mean to face what haunted them? Before she could think, a darkness surged, swallowing the light whole and pulling them down into horrors long buried. As the void locked around them, Mia grasped for the truths that would pull them through this maelstrom. "Stay together," Sam urged, their hands gripping tightly, but as they plunged deeper into the shadows, a quiet terror unfolded in the back of Mia's mind. Was it too late to escape the very truth that defined them? And what deeper horrors lay waiting, hungry for the confrontation they had yet to face? Mia's grip tightened around the flashlight. As the darkness enveloped them, she felt a sense of weightlessness, as if she were suspended in a nightmare. Shadows twisted and curled in on themselves, forming grotesque shapes that seemed to reach for her. Panic clawed at her throat. She could barely hold on to her sanity. "Where are we going?" Jake's voice quivered, echoing in the stillness. "We have to find the stories," Mia managed to say, though the words felt like rocks in her mouth. "We have to uncover whatever it is that feeds this darkness." Without warning, the ground beneath them trembled and bucked, sending a shockwave of terror rippling through their small group. The familiar library was gone, replaced by an endless hallway, lined with doors that throbbed with an ominous energy. At the end of the corridor loomed a heavy, ornate door, shrouded in shadows slinking back as if they were afraid of what was behind it. "Do we go there?" Ryan asked, uncertainty draping over him like a shroud. Mia felt a pull towards the door, her legs moving before she could consciously decide. "We have to," she said, forcing her voice steady. "It's the only way." As they approached, cold tendrils of mist wrapped around their ankles like serpents, bringing with it a bone-deep chill. The hallway was lined with portraits of children, faces twisted in expressions of anguish and terror. They were silent, yet Mia felt their eyes on her, a silent judgment weighing heavily as they passed. "Why are they looking at us?" Sam whispered, his voice breaking. "What did we do?" "It's not us," Jake insisted. "It's what we carry, our fears, our regrets." The door stood before them, ancient and terrifying, pulsating with a heartbeat of its own. Mia reached for the handle, but doubt flooded her mind. What if they unleashed something worse? Yet, the sensation of being watched pushed her to make a decision. Together? She pressed her palm against the cold wood, glancing back at her friends. A chorus of terrified nods gave her courage. "On three," Ryan commanded, his voice barely a whisper. 1, 2, a low growl rumbled from beyond the door. It vibrated through the air, the sound prickling their skin like thousands of needles. 3. They pushed the door open, cries of fear escaping their lips. The overwhelming darkness swallowed them, yet persistently pulled at their deepest fears. Inside, the room was vast and dimly lit. It was filled with shattered desks and broken chairs, almost like a graveyard of forgotten learning. In the center, their younger selves appeared again, trapped in a loop of melancholy. They were reliving moments of pain with no way to escape. Mia's past lurking like a shadow just beyond reach. "Look!" Sam yelled, pointing at an open desk where an unearthing glow pulsed from a tattered notebook. "The book! It must hold the truth." Mia felt a surge of urgency. "We need that book." But as she rushed toward it, the floor tilted beneath her. Shadows rose up in violent tendrils, blocking her path. Panic surged now, her own memories twisted into horror before her. "Mia!" Jake shouted, reaching for her but slipping as darkness crawled up his leg. "Don't let it take you!" She screamed, chest tightening as she witnessed him vanish into the void, pleading for help. "Sam, fight it!" Mia urged, but it was too late. The sickening haze consumed them, and she felt cold fingers coiling around her throat, squeezing. The echoes of laughter morphed into wails, mingling with the cries of regret from the past. The very fibers of reality stretched and twisted, sucking her deeper into despair. "Face it!" A voice called from the depths. "Face the truth." Mia struggled against the grip of despair, searching for her friends in the chaos. The shadows roared, a dark tide rising, claiming everything she held dear. "Find the stories." She cried one last time, but the words faded in the cacophony, and then, amidst the roar, the shadows parted for just a moment, revealing something far worse. The faces of children her fears made flesh, twisted and deformed, eyes wide with terror. "Mia, why didn't you save us?" they whispered. In unison, a guttural harmony that echoed through her core, sending waves of ice along her spine. As the darkness tightened around her, she realized, with a gut-wrenching clarity, this was not just a confrontation of fear, it was a reckoning of guilt that could never be undone. And as the laughter of the shadows rose to a sinister crescendo, a realization cut through the gloom. Some truths lingered long after silence fell. What awaited them was a confrontation with the very essence of their pasts. Would they emerge, or was this where they would become part of the story? Mia's heart raced as the shadows surged around her, the whispers of lost children wrapping her in tendrils of regret. She clawed at the oppressive darkness, each breath fueled by sheer desperation. She had to find her friends, had to wake from this nightmare. "Jake! Sam!" she screamed, her voice barely cutting through the rising wails. But the shadows swallowed her cries, filling the air with a sound like scraping nails against chalkboards, twisting, relentless. Suddenly, a piercing light sliced through the gloom. Blindly, Mia turned toward it, shielding her eyes as she stumbled forward. When the light settled, she found herself standing in a room filled with dusty artifacts, as if the past had been stuffed inside and forgotten. Mismatched furniture loomed like ancient sentinels watching her every move. In the corner, a cracked mirror reflected fragments of her younger self, an innocent girl, blissfully unaware of the darkness that lay ahead. The sight made her stomach sink. "Enough!" a child's voice shouted from behind her. "You're not supposed to be here." Mia spun around to find a small boy, his clothes tattered and his face marred with grief, a face she knew all too well. "Teddy?" she whispered, clutching her flashlight as if it could ward off the shadows creeping closer. "Leave. You have to go," Teddy urged, his eyes wild with fear. "It's not safe here. The stories they'll consume you." "What stories?" Mia asked, her mind racing. "What are you talking about?" "They're trapped here forever," he cried, pointing toward a series of shadowed windows. Each pane displayed horrific scenes, fragments of memories, regrets spilling into the world. She gasped as she recognized her own face in one of the windows, a younger version of herself standing alone on the playground, laughter echoing ghost-like. "Stop looking," Teddy wailed. "You can't change what happened." But Mia couldn't tear her eyes away. The other scenes blurred together, Sam failing to save his sister, Jake standing at the edge of a dark forest where whispers enticed him deeper. Each image was a fragment of guilt, rising and threatening to drown her. "No, no!" she shouted, forcing herself away from the windows. "I have to do something." Suddenly, the floor shook, sending Mia toppling over. Teddy grasped her hand, pulling her back as shadows lurched from the corners, clawing at her legs like vines seeking to anchor her to this realm of despair. "You can't fight them." Teddy's voice trembled, "They'll use your fears against you." "I won't let them," Mia yelled defiantly, shaking off his grip. Flashes of memories crashed over her like waves, faces of friends, family, moments she wished she could change. Guilt twisted her heart, but beneath that, something surged, a flicker of strength. She turned back to the windows, pointing the flashlight at the darkest one. No more. Light clashed with the shadows, creating a tension that echoed in the air. As the darkness writhed, Mia felt a sudden chill. It was as though the shadows recoiled, and in that moment, she realized something. The shadows fed on her fear, but light could repel them. "Help me!" she shouted, but Teddy shook his head, fear etched into his features. "It's too late for me," he cried. "You have to save them." With that, the shadows lunged forward, a terrifying tide of darkness determined to reclaim their hold. Mia could feel their cold breath, like icy winds stealing warmth from her skin. She had to act fast. Screaming, she tore away from Teddy, racing toward the glowing notebook that lay abandoned in the center of the room. Each step generated strength, igniting courage within her. The book pulsed with energy, the glow radiating like a beacon. If the stories held the power to trap her friends, maybe it had the answer to free them as well. The shadows howled, angry and desperate. As Mia reached for the book, she heard her name, faint but clear. "Mia! Help us!" Her heart stumbled, realization crashing over her. Her friends were trapped, but if she opened the book, she could find a way to save them. But what other horrors awaited inside its pages? Mia hesitated. Dark eyes boring into her. This was a battle not just for survival, but against the very essence of despair. She gripped the cover, feeling its pulsing heartbeat. With a deep breath, Mia opened the book, praying she wouldn't regret her choice. What would she unleash? And were the stories worth uncovering, or were they shackles disguised as hope? As the book creaked open, the shadows seemed to scream in unison, a cacophony of rage that vibrated through the very air around Mia. The pages flicked wildly, almost alive, filled with swirling ink that writhed like a nest of snakes. Words leapt out at her, icy tendrils of fear wrapping around her wrists, pinching her skin as she read that it wasn't just stories. It was a record of every soul that had been trapped, each tale steeped in regret, sorrow, and despair. The names were familiar, echoing through her mind: Jake, Sam, other faces she recognized from her childhood. Each name was a whisper, clawing its way to the surface, begging for release. "Please, Mia." Teddy's voice broke through her mounting panic. "You don't know what you're doing." Ignoring him, she focused on the shimmering text, searching for anything that resembled a way to save her friends. But as she read deeper, the words twisted into darker lore, weaving tales of warning and grief. And once they were trapped, they too cried for help, but the shadows only feasted. A chill lanced through her. What if each word she absorbed anchored her deeper into this horrifying reality? The shadows surged closer, more desperate, their dark forms stretching toward her, trying to snatch her away. With a frantic sweep, she flipped through the brittle pages, heart pounding, mind racing. What if every word was a trap, another layer of the net this place had set for her? She gritted her teeth, forcing the surrounding horrors to recede in the face of her determination. "Listen," Mia's voice came out louder than anticipated, reverberating against the walls. "I won't let this happen to you. I'll find a way. The aura of the room shifted slightly, a flicker of a response that made her heart skip. What if the book was alive, its power responding to her anger? She scanned the dark ink once more. If she could control this, bend it to her will, she'd be able to change their fates. As if sensing her resolve, an ear-splitting shriek erupted, drowning her cries. Mia turned toward the source, her eyes wide. A wave of darkness blasted forth, a thunderous presence that coursed through her, making the very air feel heavy and toxic. The shadows were not just angry. They were terrified. Then a name emerged from the aged pages, illuminated in eerie light: the Breaker. It was a story that promised salvation and damnation in equal measure. To enter the depths of the darkness to reach her friends, she had to understand what it cost to embrace the light. Mia's grasp on the book tightened, a flicker of understanding sparking inside her. The Breaker wasn't just the key to freeing them. It was a person. Someone who once dared to confront the darkness and paid the ultimate price. "You're not alone, Mia," Teddy yelled, struggling against the shadows that clung to him. "You can't do this alone." Feeling the weight of the world shifting, Mia turned back to him. "But I have to try. I want to let you go." The shadows, sensing weakened resolve, lunged forward with renewed ferocity. Mia's heart raced as she fought to keep her focus, racing back to the glowing passages, ready to summon the strength of the Breaker. But was she ready to uncover the final truth that awaited? Was uncovering that identity worth the risk? As the pages began to blur around her, the promise of salvation loomed, but it felt like a tether flirting with a precipice. What awaited her on the other side? And would she be able to return from the darkness if she pursued the truth hidden within her own heart? The shadows laughed, mocking her, as the tension in the air thickened. A voice whispered from the darkness, laced with malice, "Are you willing to pay the price?" Mia's breath quickened. She only had one choice. But the cost might be more than she could bear. As she prepared to step deeper into the mystery, uncertainty gripped her heart, and then the book began to close of its own volition. The book snapped shut with a force that rattled Mia's bones, sending dark echoes bouncing off the walls. Instantly, the shadows recoiled, hissing back like wounded creatures. A wave of dread coursed through her, mixing with the adrenaline that surged in her veins. She could feel the room constricting around her, just as if the walls were closing in, trying to snuff out her very existence. "Open it!" Teddy screamed, voice rising in panic. "It's our only chance." She hesitated. The weight of what she'd just read clawed at her insides. The Breaker, what did it mean for her? Was it really a person? Would she have to become that person, embroiled in terror as the old tales seemed to suggest? The shadows jerked angrily, as if sensing her indecision, forming twisted shapes against the flickering light. They were hungry, and she could feel their desires wrapping tighter around her skin. Gritting her teeth, Mia inhaled sharply. She had to act. She thrust her palm against the cover, willing it to open. The book quivered, then slowly began to part once more, pages fluttering like the wings of frantic birds. A spectral noise flared through the air, a million whispers that consumed her. "Find the Breaker," they chanted, a mantra of despair. Shadows lengthened, reaching for Teddy, trying to pull him into the depths of the unknown. He gasped, eyes wide with fear. With one swift motion, Mia shouted, "Stay back." Her voice tore through the cacophony. She could feel a burning sensation in her chest, a raw need to protect him flooding her body. This time, she would not falter. Page by page, she scoured the text for answers. Names spilled from the ink, people who had once attempted to absorb the power within but had been consumed instead. Their faces never materialized, suggesting their humanity had been devoured by the very darkness Mia was now facing. "Focus!" Teddy yelled again, his voice laced with desperation. "You can do this, Mia." She clenched her fists, grounding herself amidst the chaos swirling around her. A name surfaced, rising from the depths of her mind. The Breaker, but who? A memory nagged at her, vague and elusive. She had heard the story's old legends from her town's past, a figure who stood against the shadows but faded into obscurity. Marcus, she murmured, recognition lighting her eyes. The tales spoke of him. He was a child once, just like her, who had taken up the challenge against the dark forces that lurked in the forgotten corners of their world. But, like a mist, he was lost now. The cost he paid suddenly, cold fingers wrapped around her throat, squeezing. She gasped, unable to breathe, the shadows growing bolder, tasting her fear, echoing with a victory laugh that violated the very fabric of sound. Marcus, help me, she strained against the grip, tears streaming from her eyes, remorse cascading through her as she thought of the friends she might lose. Believe. Teddy cried, his voice stronger than the shadows. Call for him. Mia's heart thundered in her ears. She forced the name out. Marcus. The breaker. I need your strength. Silence fell. The shadows temporarily halted, retreating back as if recoiling from an unseen force. Hope flickered. Then, a chill swept through the room, as if the world was holding its breath. In that breathless moment, the air thickened. Wisps of light began to form, barely visible but there the faint outlines of a figure. Was this Marcus? But as quickly as it appeared, the shadows lunged, angry shouts mingling with malevolence. A blast of energy surged around Mia, colliding with the darkness. She felt it then, a connection growing stronger, sparking within her. Step into the light. A voice roared, fierce as thunder, echoing through her very soul. Just as Mia began to understand the surreal power coursing through her, the shadows screamed, voices distorted and frenzied. Frantic realization dawned. This was not just a battle for her friends, but the beginning of something unfathomable. The figures solidified, familiar and strange, revealing faces she thought were lost forever. But who would emerge from the shadows? And at what cost? As the darkness shrieked in fury, Mia's breath caught, the light was starting to dim, the room warped like a distorting mirror. Are you ready to meet the breaker? The question hung heavy in the air, marinating thick with uncertainty. Time felt suspended. Would she trade everything to uncover this dark truth? And then the shadows surged with ferocity, overwhelming the fragile light in an explosion of chaos. The darkness roared, shaking the very foundations of the room. Mia clutched the book tighter, her knuckles white, as a shimmering figure lurked at the threshold of her vision. You're strong, Mia, a gentle voice urged, echoing like distant thunder. It felt familiar yet frightening, resonating deep within her bones. She squinted through the storm of shadows, forcing herself to focus, to believe. Marcus. She shouted, the name bursting forth like lightning in the gloom. I need your help. And then, a light erupted, piercing through the suffocating shroud. The figure stepped into partial view, revealing a boy, not much older than Mia. His eyes burnished with courage glittered against the backdrop of despair. You must confront them, he said, voice unwavering. Harness the fears. Acknowledge them. With those words, the shadows twisted, hissing loudly in fury, as if her declaration had pierced their heart. The walls began to buckle, trembling in a cacophony of torment. No! They screeched. You don't know what you are doing. But Mia did know. Angry tears streamed down her cheeks, mixing with the fog of desperation. I know exactly what I'm doing. She cried, bolstered by Marcus's presence. I want to let you take them. Remember. Marcus shouted, urgency backing his words. You own your truth. Suddenly, shrieks erupted from the shadows, morphing into intimate whispers of her deepest fears, her past failures, her insecurities. Each shadow bore the faces of her friends, twisting into grotesque forms that rail against a terrifying past. But it was now or never, summoning every ounce of strength, she flicked her flashlight toward the swirling darkness, drawing upon the glimmer of light within. I confronted my fears. You are nothing without them. She yelled. You feed on fear, but I will face it. The shadows paused, as if the power of her proclamation struck them like thunder. No! They roared collectively. But she pressed on, pushing back against the darkness swirling around her. Jake! Sam! I need you! She called out to her friends. We're stronger together. The urgency of her words pushed against the engulfing shadows, and then she heard them, faint but resonant. We're here, Mia. Sam's voice broke through the chaos, piercing the dark moment. We have your back. With renewed vigor, the trio came forward, their shadows intertwining, amplifying Mia's light. We face this darkness together. Jake cried, anger mingling with defiance. Mia turned back to the book, flipping through the pages with urgency as the shadows cowered. Each word she read filled her with resolve. You want to consume us? You can't. We have the power to confront you. The shadows twisted violently, the cacophony of their shrieks intensifying, but their hold weakened. The light from the book pulsed brighter, forcing the darkness to recede inch by inch. We will not be forgotten. The whispers dwindled, echoes of wails fading like ashes on the wind. Find the truth. Mia shouted once more, as the edges of her vision sparkled with glimmers of hope. In that moment of unity, they wove their collective strength into a beam of light that cut through the swirling mass. Suddenly, the shadows wrenched apart, revealing a swirling vortex behind them, a gateway shimmering with color. You may have won this battle, but the shadows will always be near, a final voice hissed, retreating into obscurity as the lingering darkness pulled back. Together. Mia urged her friends, their hands clasped firmly. They rushed toward the portal, driven by a sense of urgency greater than fear. With one final push, they leapt through the gateway, bursting into a warm light that enveloped them entirely, dissolving the last traces of dark memories. And suddenly, the summer bell rang, signaling the end of the school year. They landed on solid ground, sunlight streaming around them. No shadows, no whispers, just the reassuring sounds of laughter and distant chatter. Breathless, they collapsed onto the grass, hearts still racing but filled with relief. Did we really make it? Sam panted, glancing around. We did, Mia finally breathed, looking at her friends, joy dawning upon their faces. Never again, Jake declared, staring back at the school. We face what's real now. Their burdens felt a tad lighter, the shadows replaced by the warmth of the sun. They understood their fears, their pasts rather than erase them. They had confronted the darkness head-on. As graduation loomed closer, they smiled wryly at each other. Life was waiting, fresh and unwritten. Mia leaned back, gazing up into the blue sky, freedom washing away the remnants of dread. They had escaped the darkness, but it would remain a part of them, an anchor and a beacon, reminding them of who they had faced and emerged from. The school stood in the distance, no longer ominous but a part of their growth, a chapter closing with a resounding power. The future was bright, filled with laughter and the promise to confront whatever came next. But now, it was time to leave the shadows behind, and as the bell tolled for the last time, the trio stood together, hearts firm and eyes bright, ready for whatever adventure awaited them next. You need to subscribe now to never miss out on intense stories like this. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and keep the thrill alive. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories. I want to know what you think about the ending, and wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to experience this conclusion.